朝から悪い噂、悪いニュースばかり。ママの作ったマーマレードは悪くない。ママどれどれ美味しいじゃない。紅茶の温度もちょうどいい。私のママはわがままじゃない。わがままじゃない。
Greetings, viewers. Welcome to a special commentary. What the fuck? Oh, Pri, is that you?
Hey, lunatic, how's everything going?
We're having a power outage for some reason.
Oh, are we? How odd. You know, I've been thinking, you remember that time I sold off all my Umi merch so we could pay off all of our bills on time?
Mm-hmm. What about that, Pri?
Or, you know, that time I bought you several different Nico Yazawa plushies when you caught COVID?
Mm-hmm. Why do you mention it?
Or, you know, that time I gathered all 7 Dragon Balls and brought you back to life that one time after you fell down a flight of stairs and fucking died?
Indeed, I do remember that. You know, Pri, do you remember that time I got into contact with the bank to see why our bills hadn't been paid on time, only to discover that $5K had been withdrawn from my account, and then 5 seconds later I discovered all of this Symphogear merch lying around our living room?
No. Guess I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, I know. That's because I'm doing that right now.
Luna, I'm so sorry. Please don't kick me out of the house.
Kick you out of the house? Sheesh, I wouldn't go that far.
You wouldn't?
No, I think I'm actually just gonna fucking kill you.
Please don't.
Convince me not to.
Anyways, gotta go. They're about to sell out of these Kirika figures that I'm probably going to kill all these people over here to get, so please don't kill me when I get back.
Why Kirika anyways? Well, okay. So, my lovely audience, this was intended to be a very special commentary celebrating the funny number 75. Unfortunately, me and my roommate Pre-Luna are having some budgetary issues, so I'm gonna have to get a little more lazy than usual with the production, or else we're gonna have some problems. Primarily with the IRS, but also with the Mexican Mafia. Then there's also the Corporation of the Alternative Tax Takers. Point being, shit's rough. I'm gonna roll the intro so I can get the candles and chief speakers ready. BRB.
Certified lover boy, certified pedophiles. That fuck 'em up. I'ma do my stuff. Why you trolling like a bitch? Ain't you tired? Trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor. They not like us. 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 You think the bay gon' let you disrespect pop, nigga? I think that open show gon' be your last stop, nigga.
Okay, that takes care of the lights. Now for the commentary. I did some digging for a suitable video and came across this oldie from the ancient year of 2018, though the story behind this video dates back to a couple of years earlier in the time before history, 1996. Dragon Ball GT, the successor series to Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z that, unlike its prior 2 anime, was not based on a manga at all. Instead, Toei Animation concocted it in the same lab they created Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0. Basically, it was incredibly controversial for not being the most well-written, and to this day isn't seen as a worthy successor to Dragon Ball Z at all, with most of the love it gets now being a result of people feeling the need to weigh one mid-sequel against another, said other being 2015's Dragon Ball Super. But before Super was even a thought in the mind of a Toei executive, or, well, probably was, if not officially announced, because this would have been around the same time in early mid-2015, but YouTuber Scorpion made a video detailing his top 10 reasons why Dragon Ball GT was terrible. 2 years later in 2017, a little bastard named Lunatic the Game made his 3rd ever commentary by directly covering Scorpion's video. A little bit after this, that video was covered by Joni Rue, at the time still going by her dead name, so she'll be referred to differently by all parties involved, not named Lunatic the Game from 2024. But yeah, Jodi's video was covered by Supersonicward15 and Kyokun in June 2018, and that's what we're going to be covering today. There really isn't much else to, say, so, yeah, it's, never mind, I'm just gonna start the video, y'all have fun.
Alright, so this is going to be a little disclaimer because this video has been actually long overdue, and, I just decided, hey, let's go ahead and, do a disclaimer for this since
personally, I believe commentators have the right to express themselves in any way they see fit, even if that is in an unscripted manner. Unfortunately, I've decided to retract my commitment to this cause because I think Sonic Ward is going to ruin my reputation if I defend this disclaimer. Who knows, maybe this disclaimer segment would have been as long as it ends up being, 1:30, whether or not you chose to make it unscripted, but Yaza wa Nico, nigga! With all the confused bumbling that would make Joe Biden look coherent by comparison, on top of it being very clear you're struggling to get through your thoughts, I feel this overwhelming sense to ask you to get to the fucking point already. I understand you want to let your audiences know why exactly this video took so long to get out. As it started production in February 2017, it didn't come out for another 16 months according to my 15-year-old self. And the segment does explain as to why that's the case. However, your inability to not stumble over yourself just makes me go, alright, we get it, we get it. I don't want to keep my audience here any longer than they want to be, so to quickly sum this up, this unscripted disclaimer to explain why this video took so long to come out is understandable, but I do feel it goes on much longer than it should, and while I completely understand explaining how the video's production resulted in this development hell, man, it just ain't necessary. Ward makes it a point to explain all the different forms the video took, the various co-op partners he was going to have. Just say fuck you, I'm sorry this video took so long to come out. I know back in 2018 covering videos that were more than 5 seconds old was considered a huge felony, but I think there were much better ways to go about explaining yourself to the court of public opinion.
Oh, I almost forgot. This video was supposed to be for me and Kyo, not you.
Can you make it a try-op?
It's too late, Jim. Sorry. You can stay here and watch us.
Wait, when you think about it, isn't that technically commentary NTR?
No, I think I'll just watch TV instead.
Wait, where are you going? I must know for scientific research.
What the hell is even that?
Once again, I'd like to platform the attitude that I believe commentators are more than free to express their points in any ways they see fit, unless it in any way inconveniences me in any sort of way I'm incapable of comprehending. Now, while I am a person who believes in freedom of expression, I don't quite believe in freedom from consequences. But seriously, I genuinely cannot wrap my head around the fact that Sonicward felt it was best to relegate perhaps the most important segment of his video to a wall of fucking text. Like, text isn't inherently bad in commentaries, but if you use it like this, then it definitely is, because I must raise the question, if you have the capabilities to just record all of this in audio format and present it to the audience in the same way you do the rest of the video, then why not do that? Why does the context need this treatment? As far as I'm aware, there is no clear reason for this. It's just something Ward does. And it's something he only does for this segment, as the rest of the video, or at least most of it, is audio-based save for a couple of random thrown-in interjections that needed text. So I really must emphasize that question I raised before. Why? Not only that, but the reason it's just a problem here is because Ward makes it so inconvenient. In most commentaries I've seen that utilize text in any sort of decent manner, it focuses on short sentences, so the audience can have enough time to read them in the allocated time given to them to read it. This way, the audience doesn't feel any sort of pressure to quickly skim through the text in case the text offs itself before they can finish. You want to know how much time Ward allocates for this text box? 10 seconds. That is not enough fucking time to read all of this. And yes, I know you could just easily just pause the video and make this a billion times easier for yourself, but it just eliminates the flow of your video, and it makes me question why this couldn't have been a couple of lines of audio dialogue instead. Forcing the audience to pause the video to read text can work, especially when doing so is the punchline of a quick flash of text that acts as an Easter egg. I've seen that a couple times, and I think that's acceptable, but this stands in such stark contrast because there is no punchline. Other than that, Ward is a bad editor who makes confusing production choices, but I digress. And I really wish I could just leave this nearly page worth of a rant at just that, but delving deeper into this wall of fucking shame showcases another major issue. Ward is not very good with English grammar. Like, I don't want to harp too much on him for this, but it does make reading this a little more difficult than it needs to. If you don't mind me, I'm going to pull a commentary number 18 and give you a bit of an English lesson. Firstly, why do you immediately indicate that all of this is in text? Like, yeah, I can see that. After some theorizing, I'm going to assume that this is because this was ripped directly from the script, which I get was probably the most convenient way to handle it, but like, Never mind. I just think you could have removed the indication that it was text in the commentary itself, because obviously that was just meant as a reminder for yourself as to how you wanted to present the context when you got around to editing it. But it becomes unnecessary when presenting it to the audience unless you're sending some sort of subliminal message indicating that you want them to edit your videos for you. I get this is, like, the biggest of nitpicks, but, well, fuck you. Anyways, the first sentence, Lunatic the Game did a commentary on Scorpion who did the top 10 reasons why Dragon Ball GT sucks, is weird as hell. Firstly, personally, for the sake of clarity and better flow, I probably would have split everything up to about who into its own sentence or split it with a comma. Obviously, I'd also rewrite the sentence a bit to further clarify the roles of those involved in the degrees but details. More importantly, the usage of the word the in the sentence, Scorpion who did the top 10 reasons why Dragon Ball GT sucks. Like, you don't use the in this specific context. You would if you'd made us familiar with the video before, because then you could be using that as a way to essentially say the aforementioned video, but that's not what's happening here. It just sounds weird because of that. In the second sentence, it should be lunatics, not lunatics singular. Also, why mention me covering a 2-year-old video? Like, it's not really such a relevant talking point that it needs to be brought up to fully understand the context surrounding the video, so personally there's no need to bring it up. Plus, I'm not personally a big fan of having it and split up the sentence. It just kind of makes it feel like a run-on, and it'd probably sound better by writing it more like, Lunatic commentary came out on January 17th, 2017, period. He was covering a video that was 2 years old, period. Also, really large nitpick here, but I don't see the need for noting the specific dates both me and Joni's videos came out on, since it really serves no purpose. It just makes an already large amount of text unnecessarily longer. Anyways, the sentence, Lunatic saw Joni's commentary and decided to respond to Joni with another commentary, and Joni disowned her video and Lunatic semi-disowned his video responding to Joni, is another run-on. Personally, I would have split it up in between the part about me covering Joni and Joni disowning it as a result, though personally splicing it with a comma and saying something along the lines of, after which Joni disowned her video on Lunatic, and then putting down a period and making the statement about me semi-disowning the video in its own sentence. This whole paragraph is written incredibly poorly, throwing that into the already large list of reasons why this context segment is just fucking terrible. Try again.
Jonah, I got some commentary material for you. Some weirdo defending a bad anime.
Yes, though I'm commentating on an anime I know nothing about. GT.
What? Who hasn't seen GT? You or Joni? I'm confused because... Okay, let me back up and explain this, right? I could see this being you taking aim at Joni, given you pull up a screenshot of her comment she made underneath my video on her, video on me, where she admits her video on me wasn't that good, with Kyo putting focus on Joni acknowledging a lack of experience with any of the Dragon Ball movies and much of the anime too. The problem with this joke is I wouldn't suggest Joni knows nothing about Dragon Ball GT based on the fact that she specifically states, I've only ever watched a bit of the anime, meaning she at least has some knowledge of the series. And not only that, even if Joni's arguments against my original video are atrocious, she at least showcases a pretty good understanding of its story and its characters, as we will see as we go through this video. Mind you, just because Joni hasn't seen much of the anime doesn't mean she doesn't know anything about it. In fact, even though I was a huge Dragon Ball fan back when I made my video on Score, I hadn't seen much of the anime myself. Yeah, don't fuck with us Dragon Ball fans, we don't actually watch the show. Look, it's because of this that I actually wonder if you're saying this about yourself, changing the entire purpose of this interjection. If that's the case, the reason I'm confused is because why do you feel the need to point this out? Like, it's probably a joke, but it doesn't really feel like one. It just feels like you're pointing something out. Imagine if the only thing I said in this interjection was, freaky ass nigga, you're a 69 god, right? There's nothing, no substance, no style, just me pointing something out. Either way, the interjection's fucked, and it's the first one, so that doesn't bode well for whatever comes after this. Welcome everybody to Lunatic Commentaries or whatever. This is just the beginning of my endless quest to become the greatest Dragon Ball nerd on the internet.
I'm sorry, what did you say? You want to be the biggest Dragon Baller in the universe? The biggest Dragon Ball nerd in the universe? If it's the latter, don't feel bad for yourself. Not all Dragon Ball fans are nerds.
Yeah, some of us don't even watch the show. Crazy, isn't it?
All joking aside though, you think you could be a little bit more clear?
Sure, his volume is a bit low, but we can hear him just fine, and also it seems like you can understand him too because of what you said here.
If it's the latter, don't feel bad for yourself. Not all Dragon Ball fans are nerds.
I know, right?
No! It's clear based on her interjection that Joni isn't certain if I said Dragon Ball nerd or Dragon Ball-er. Joni might be able to get a pretty good idea of what I meant, but her argument is that I could have spoken a little clearer here so she doesn't have to raise a question like this in the first place. Just because she correctly assesses that I might have said Dragon Ball nerd doesn't mean she could perfectly understand me or should have been able to. She might have come to that conclusion purely based on context clues, not her own ability to understand me after all. Also, just because you and Kyo could understand me doesn't inherently mean Joni not being able to is a skill issue on her end. That's a terrible argument. I can completely understand Joni's criticism, as if you pay close enough attention to the way I said the phrase,
greatest Dragon Ball nerd on the internet.
Notice that 14-year-old me hardly puts any emphasis on the N in nerd at all. You can sort of hear it, but I can understand some people not picking up on it and hearing Dragon Ball erd instead. Joni was actually onto something here, so yeah, whoops.
Today, I'll be taking a stab at Scorpion, another Dragon Ball guy like Geekdom and so on and so forth.
Wait, but who's Geekdom? Is he somebody you look up to? Is he your senpai? Is he the Dragon Ball god? Seriously though, this is a pointless name drop. Not everybody is going to know who Geekdom is.
Well, he did try to give out examples of who does Dragon Ball Z related content. I guess you can make the argument that it was a simple nitpick, but at least Lunatic was trying to relate Scorpion to another content creator who does something similar to him.
This is so poorly worded it fucking hurts. It sounds more like you're countering Joni's statements of mentioning Geekdom here was pointless and not everyone knows who that is with, well, he did try to give examples of who does Dragon Ball related videos. Like, okay? I give out examples of people who do Dragon Ball things. Why does this matter if Joni's issues are that Geekdom's role in this context would leave audience confused as to who he is, why he matters, and just fills out a place? Your counter-argument feels like you going, well, he did this, so it's actually okay, when that doesn't argue fucking anything. In actuality, after mulling it over a whole bunch, I realize this point is specifically countering Joni's claims of it being a pointless name drop, with your counter arguing that it was me trying to give examples of people who do Dragon Ball content, therefore, people similar to Scorpion. This is just the assiest wording you could have chosen though, because it takes a fucking PhD and 5 minutes to figure that out. I respect the fact that you were never the best at wording yourself, Ward, but when it's so bad it can cause insane levels of confusion as to your intentions, then it needs to be scrutinized.
And last but not least, Lunatic and Geekdom are primarily Dragon Ball channels. Lunatic is a commentator, so it's a little mad, but his channel is still Dragon Ball themed nonetheless, meaning that the chances are potentially low for someone to see this channel without having already known who Geekdom is.
I mean, the viewership of commentaries tends to be both from people who enjoy SCC-styled videos and those who are interested in the discourse surrounding the videos being covered. For example, my video on The Austin attracted attention from lots of Dragon Quest fans who were interested in the discourse surrounding if Erdrick was to be the second DLC character for Smash Ultimate. Or my Neuralities video got a lot of attention from a good chunk of the anime community, as Neuralities was a hot topic at the time I released my video on her. So I can definitely imagine lots of people who flocked to my score video would have known who Geekdom was already. But I do feel that since I am a part of the larger SCC, and there would have been some people who were unfamiliar with Geekdom and Dragon Ball discourse in general, it might have been best to elaborate on who that was, or not bring him up at all to save anyone the headaches. Plus, mind you, I was brand fucking new to the SCC and had tons of eyes on me to see if I was going to be a future bandwagon or not. It probably would have been best if I pandered to the SCC side of the viewer base to make sure they were at least in on what I was doing.
This video was released back in 2015 and was his first big hit. So wait, why am I doing a video so old? Well, this video was a rant on Dragon Ball GT, the second sequel to Dragon Ball and the one that's been disowned by Dragon Ball Super. It gets a lot of hate from fans, and they have good reasons to hate it. However, this video gives like the worst points in why it's bad.
Wait, but this was still made in 2015. Who's to say he still stands by what he said in the past?
Hey Jonah, you're correct. If the video is 2 years old, his opinion might have changed. But here's the thing, I'll be arguing two fronts. Lunatic said that the video was the worst example as to why GT sucks, implying that the guy in the video was overreacting to make GT even worse than it already is. Wow, Jonah, it's like you didn't even listen to what Lunatic said. He's arguing the general points that people have against GT nowadays.
That's actually true. The intentions of my video were to critique general Dragon Ball GT discourse of that era, with Score being an example of what I felt was the worst of this kind of criticism the show got back then. I'm actually kind of surprised to figure that out, Ward. Definitely not because I think lowly of you or anything, absolutely not, like 100% seriously, I don't, that's not what I'm getting across here, but because anyone familiar with my 50th comm where I covered my Score video, you might remember that I got onto myself for not making that clear to my audience. It's because of that while I do think you do a good job clarifying to Joni what I meant, I do think it fails to take into account that this really isn't that obvious. In my Score video, I ask, why am I covering a video so old? To which I follow that question up with a statement that, well, GT gets a lot of hate from fans, and they have good reasons often, but this video gives the worst reasons. Which does not answer that question. It sounds like I'm saying, why am I covering an old video? This video is a bad rant on GT, let's cover it. And so this isn't really a case of her not listening, it's a case of me not really explaining well.
Funny how you say that, Sonic, because after doing some snooping, I figured out that he still does feel the same way about GT. He made not one, but two lists of himself reference how much he hates GT.
Okay, but Joni earlier was saying, how do you know if he still stands by what he said in the past? And we can presume that means what he said in the specific video I was covering. Keel, you're arguing that Score, by mid-2018, still stood by his thoughts and opinions on GT. Again, however, Joni is particularly pointing at the video Score released on GT. Score could still fucking hate GT, but not entirely agree with his reasons from 2015. I know my reasons for hating Naruto Shippuden are different in 2024 than they had been in 2018, for example, so it's not impossible. But basically, pointing to these examples just misses the point entirely, and this tangent you take us on is a waste of time because of that. Oh yeah, and mind you, that last example, as you point out, was from December 2017, long after Joni's video from early February of that same year. I get you just wanted to point this out to really hit home how his opinion never changed, but don't make it appear you're trying to make it seem Joni should have been aware of this, using examples that didn't exist when she was producing her video.
Next time, you should dive more into your target before firing shots. Sorry, man, but
don't take it personally.
But hold on, Kyo, there's another way he could have checked. He could have checked Scorpion's original video and looked at his description, and looky here! Scorpion tried giving it a chance, but he couldn't stand it anymore! Now I know what you guys are thinking. How do you and Keo know that Scorpion hasn't changed his opinion?
I thought about ignoring this because it'd be another huge nitpick, but come on, I gotta point this out. So let's look at the way this segment is presented, right? Kyo expresses that he can tell Score still stands by his thoughts and opinions on GT by looking at examples of times he mentioned that he still hates GT in other videos. Ward assumes the audience is going to question how they know that Score still stands behind his opinions on GT, even though Kyo just explained why. Sure, Ward does give some different reasons after this, but then I have to ask why you didn't bring this up when Kyo was giving examples. My issue here is that you raised this question at a weird time because Kyo already gave us, the audience, a reason to believe that indeed Score still did stand behind his reasons, so you have no reason to say this.
Number 10. Goku is a kid again. After all that Goku went through growing up, after all the training and opponents he fought, why the fuck would you turn Goku into a kid? I know that the only true reason to why they did this was because they wanted to copy the Dragon Ball series. This is the stupidest thing to do at the beginning of the series. When I saw this as a kid, I was pissed. I thought the show was going to be better than Dragon Ball Z because it was a sequel, but it was so wrong. This was done to make Goku weak so that the next opponents he takes on aren't a bigger threat than Buu. But if you can't come up with a bigger threat than Majin Buu, then why the fuck would you make a sequel to Dragon Ball Z? I hate this. Goku became a true badass as an adult, and now we gotta see him act like a 40-year-old all over again.
Okay, first off, when Goku was turned back into a child, he retained all of his earlier memories and abilities, which makes him smarter than he was at the beginning of Dragon Ball. Second off, he's actually around the same strength as he was before.
At first, he's smarter than he was in Dragon Ball. That's really not saying much. Even though Goku is nowhere near as stupid as he was in the original Dragon Ball, he's still pretty dumb outside of fighting.
actually Goku still has his smarts. It's just he's even more childish than his adult age. There were so many times that Goku had made stupid mistakes in Dragon Ball Z due to his childish side. For example, sparing Raditz by letting go his tail. Also when he almost lost the Potara ring.
These two examples are really not Goku being childish. In the first case, it wasn't him being childish that resulted in him letting Raditz go. It was his naivety and good nature that allowed Raditz to sweet-talk him with promises of leaving the Earth the moment Goku let him go. In the second case, Goku almost losing the Potara earrings, unless I'm mistaken, that wasn't even him. That was his fraud of a son missing the one earring he threw at him when it was thrown his way. Goku did nothing wrong in that example. Fuck you, Gohan. I fucking hate you. Nah, I love you, Gohan. You're the GOAT. But seriously, Goku did nothing wrong in that example, unless we're actually talking about something else which you don't really explain, so elaboration. Do it.
Goku childish sides tends to hinder the fusions. For example, when Gogeta turned Super Saiyan 4, he just kept playing around with Omega Shenron. I'm sorry, but you can't just blame GT Goku for this.
What Kyo is trying to say is that it's Goku's character traits. Of course Goku is dumb outside of battle. It's been that way since the beginning.
I honestly have no idea how this counters Joni's point about Goku still being the same. The issue with their point is that, yeah, Goku still might be dumb outside of fights, but Score accuses GT Goku of acting like a 4-year-old as a result of being downgraded to a kid again, which I argued wasn't the case because he retained his adult memories. Again, Joni's point is that he's still dumb outside of fights, though smarter than he was in Dragon Ball to be fair. Pointing to the fact that he's always been this way completely misses the point of the statement. Now, you actually do make a good argument against Joni's point after this, but this specific statement feels so unrelated and makes me question why you made this point in the first place.
If you really look at the details, you'll notice that none of the characters look anything close to what they should have looked like. Bring out the animation. Okay, yeah, the models were different than they were in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, but even then you have to admit, these different models in GT actually helped GT's animation. The last house who struggled to make animation in Z, and they were making most of the animation in Z in fact, actually did a better job in GT there. And the reason? Well, it's because of simpler models. I know it may be different, but if it at least helps the animators get used to stuff, then I'm okay with it.
The problem isn't that the designs are complex, it's when they get the designs completely wrong that it becomes a big problem. There's another video that covered why GT sucks, and I think you'll find a certain bit of footage you should look at. Take a look. Look at this! Look at this! Frieza's lips are not pink! That isn't Frieza! With the exception of Cell, most of the pictures used were animation errors. GT just butchers the designs of characters.
Also, fun fact, Akira Toriyama didn't have full control over GT. He only made sure the project was staying true to the characters story-wise, not art-wise. Since Akira Toriyama does the art for the show himself, GT had a different animation team other than Z, so it's understandable why mistakes were made.
I just love the smell of misinformation in the morning. Pretty much every studio and important people on the animation team were carried over from Z to GT. Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, who was the lead character designer for the Buu Saga, was the lead character designer for GT too. Chief animation supervisor for GT, Naoki Miyahara, had already been involved with Z as a major key animator for Studio Junio and Toei Animation, and had even acted as an episode animation supervisor for 4 episodes. The other chief animation supervisor, Tadayoshi Yamamuro, had acted as an episode animation supervisor on several episodes in Z for Shindo Pro Studios, and later went on to be the lead character designer for the movies, starting from Broly, with those designs often repurposed for the Buu Saga. Otherwise, while GT did lose some Z studios to other projects, Rip Studio Cockpit in particular, it retained Seigasha, Last House, the only 2 studios who'd been with the franchise since the OG Dragon Ball days, fun fact, Studio Live, Studio Carpenter, and of course Toei Animation itself. Also, the lead into this point is kinda dumb. Firstly, because Toriyama does the art for the show itself, GT had a different animation team from Z. What does Toriyama doing art for the show himself have to do with GT having a different animation team? I'm honestly certain this is terrible wording, and you meant he doesn't do art for the show, which helps maintain the assessment that he had no control over who was on the project. Whether or not that's the case either way, Toriyama never had control over any of the anime adaptations. GT was no different in that regard. Sure, he did give them some input, such as how he suggested the name Dragon Ball Z when Toei decided to rebrand the OG anime back in '89, but for the most part the anime was produced without Toriyama's involvement in any major capacity. The main problem with these animation errors, as I brought up back in 2017 with my video on Joni, is that they all came from the same studio, Doga Kobo, as their team either struggled with production problems behind the scenes or struggled with Dragon Ball's designs, something which was also the case in their one episode from DBZ, by the way. I feel like there's more I can argue here, but this point has literally fried my brain. I'm just gonna move on.
Number 7, the music. The music in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z were amazing. They are so good that I even bought the soundtrack score to the series.
Oh gosh, guys, stand back. This is a real hardcore Dragon Ball fan. He bought all the CDs.
Is this supposed to be some kind of pot shot? If so, I really don't get it. If this wasn't a joke, then this was a point just for making a point. Seriously, never do that again. Got it memorized? Actually, I'm making Axel my main right now just so I can use that as my catchphrase.
Anyway, yes, you're correct. It was a pointless interjection. And guess what? It was also there to take a jab at Scorpion. You know, as a joke. It's not like Lunatic took 15 or 20 seconds to complete that pointless interjection. It took him 5 seconds. Jonah, it's like you're saying that we can't make pot shots or jokes at all.
No, you're misunderstanding. Joni's issue is that she doesn't know what the intentions of this are. Because if this was meant to be a joke or a pot shot, she doesn't really get what it's supposed to be. And fair, this whole pot shot is just, this guy bought all the Dragon Ball GT CDs, which makes him a hardcore Dragon Ball fan. Which, yeah, I guess it does. What's so funny about that? What's the joke behind that? That's the problem. It causes Joni to question if that's even meant to be a joke in the first place. The problem isn't making pot shots on principle, it's when they fucking suck. Got it memorized? Hope so.
Is that just your excuse of having dragon-looking enemies just like in Dragon Ball?
I like how you pretend this is a terrible plot point. It's simple, but it's a fitting conclusion to the franchise, since hunting for the Dragon Balls was what Dragon Ball was about back in the beginning, and they combine it with the action they had in Z. And of course the final villains would be dragons. The Dragon Balls are the Dragon Balls! They spawn a dragon! Of course the villains would be dragons.
They didn't have to be dragons, though. They could have, say, revived everybody evil who they were fighting against. After all, they were the ones that caused them to use the Dragon Balls in the first place.
Of course there would be dragons. I mean, what do you think would come out of the Dragon Balls? A magic carp? The negative energy that was built inside the Dragon Balls had to be released from the overpower of negative energy. Now, if you think of it this way, what comes out the Dragon Balls? Shenron! Yes, my kitties! And what is Shenron? Yes, kitties! A dragon! So there would be dragons come bursting out of the negative Dragon Balls, just like Shenron!
By the way, in Ward's videos, there's like an almost 10-minute gap between Kyo's last interjection and this one. Where the fuck did he go? Anyways, this point completely misunderstands Joni's argument entirely. I argue against Score claiming that the Shadow Dragons are just an excuse to have dragon-looking enemies to rip off Piccolo's squad in OG Dragon Ball by pointing out that it makes sense the final villains of Dragon Ball, a story focused around balls that release dragons, would be dragons. Joni counters this by making the argument that it didn't necessarily have to be the case. For example, they could have brought back every villain they ever faced before, possibly. Mind you, this completely misses the point of my argument, which wasn't suggesting that this was the only sensible way they could have ended the plot, but simply that it made more sense than Score was giving it credit. The problem with Kyo's argument is that for some reason, he acts like Joni was suggesting it didn't make any sense that the final villains would be dragons, when in actuality, again, she was stating that it didn't have to be dragons. Because of this, Kyo essentially just redoes my point from my 2017 video, which has literally zero effect against Joni's point. This is literally a pileup of somebody missing the point on top of somebody already missing the point. Get the fuck off her, Kyo!
Number 2, plot lines. So we talked about the plot holes. Now let's get down to the bigger mess, the plot lines. Turning Goku into a kid was the start of a retarded storyline. Fighting opponents weaker than themselves and being afraid of them is another. Hiding from weak-ass enemies, fighting giant worms, and getting their asses kicked by 3 little fellas in red spandex who dance off and make you dance with them? What the fuck was that?
Toriyama humor, my friend. Now go watch the first arc and I'll give you a pass. Oh, and I may have missed the portion with them running away from enemies, but that was because they were trying to get their shit back unnoticed and not cause any problems to people that stole it. Because they did get noticed eventually, they had to go through a lot of stuff just to get their first Dragon Ball.
I agree with you somewhat, but the problem is, you didn't even talk about the other thing he mentioned. That being having to deal with enemies that are weaker than themselves, thereby not adding a challenge. I mean, where's the suspense if you automatically know that Goku's going to win in the end?
Wait a tick, you're saying that these villains suck because they didn't get the chance to kill the main characters? Going by that logic, Giovanni and Team Rocket and most of the Pokemon villains and any anime villain that didn't reach their goals sucks. Knowing you, if you say Madara sucks as a villain, you will get slapped really hard by the Naruto fandom.
No, she did not say that, actually. Her issue was that there isn't any suspense in the narrative if you know that Goku is ultimately going to win in the end. this being the result of the characters having to fight enemies who are much weaker than them. Ignoring any potential issues I do have with Joni's argument, this completely misrepresents it. Joni was not suggesting that villains who don't beat the main characters are bad, or anything remotely close to that. Again, it was that there is a lack of suspense in the narrative because Goku is already stronger than everyone, therefore we know Goku is going to win. Again though, that's wrong, but I'll let it slide. For now. Also, I actually genuinely do not care what the Naruto fandom says. Madara's fucking lame as hell. Gary Stu Toby rip-off Sonic the Hedgehog hairdo have an ass.
Well, since he's all done, I just got this to say. He did make some nice points, but there was a lot of blind spots. Even Sonic can see, even though he's a Hyuga.
Actually, I think you mean especially because he's a Hyuga. I mean, you know, given the 360, Byakugan, Vision, Eye, Ocular, Jutsu stuff I am not about to explain right now. Also, face me when I'm talking to you, goddammit. You know what, I'm fucking out of here. I've used my convenience foresight to check. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else of interest to cover in this video. I'm putting it down. Honestly, I wrote down final thoughts for this video. They suck, though. So I'm just gonna fucking do it unscripted and prove that Ward could have gotten to his thoughts better. So here's what we're gonna say. As of early 2024, Ward and Kyo are no longer members of the SCC. They don't do commentators. I don't even think they do videos anymore. But I'm just going to say this. Guys, you both missed the point a whole bunch. And I think you guys needed to pay a lot closer to attention to what Joni and I, and really everybody in the chain, were doing. Because it was clear you didn't quite understand everything. You just quickly jumped to the conclusion that, yeah, this is what's going on. We're going to do this. I know that's like commentary basics, but it's worth saying. I think you guys might want to know about that. Also, Ward, your wording is ass. I know English isn't your strong suit, but I think you definitely might have wanted to work on that because, yeah, it's a little hard to understand you, and as a commentator, you kind of need people to understand you. I'm surprised, you know, you never really had the opportunity to work on that when you were still here, but, oh well. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Yeah. It's crazy how long ago 2018 was, but that's completely irrelevant to this video and all discussion surrounding it. I just gotta say, everybody have a great night. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna go try to get the power back on. So you guys have a great time going to sleep or doing whatever children do these days. So I will see you all later. Night, ciao, tschüss.